Hey students, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you guys are all doing well. It's Chase here with Star Tutors, here for another live stream. We had a number of requests from SAT students to produce some of the videos, those real-time videos that we've done in the past. So I figured we'd do that today. We're going to focus mainly on ACT videos going forward, but just for the time being, I figured we'd do one SAT no calc video, just because it's the shortest section, truth be told. But we are going to do a lot more SAT videos as soon as the July ACT is done. So again, apparently we had some great comments with one of our teaching assistants responding to a couple comments about the SAT exam. So I just figured we'd do one more of these videos based on what he was saying and based on what our teaching assistant was saying in the comments. If you guys have seen Owen do some of these videos, he said that we should maybe do an SAT video here. For the ACT test takers, as you guys are logging on, for ACT test takers, we're going to be doing another ACT review video tomorrow. That's going to be going over the ACT English section, so I encourage you guys to be there for that. In the meantime today, guys, we're going to be doing SAT Math No Calculator, test number 7. And we will hopefully work through that. We'll see what the timing looks like. It's 25 minutes for this section. It's always section number 3 of the test. And hopefully I'll be able to go over some of the concepts that we typically teach in our classes and teach on the app, and you guys will be good to go from there. So, guys, if you're watching live, let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys, just to keep making sure that we can answer any of your questions. And then if you guys have any questions for me before we get started, again, this is SAT Math No Calculator test number 7. We also have all of our, when we created this video, when we created the link to this live stream, we posted in the description below all of the previous math videos we've done for the SAT. So for those students that are tuning in, watching for the SAT stuff, check out those description links. We have done, I think, test 6. This is 7 we're doing today. I think we've done 8, 9, and 10. We've also done a couple calculator portions. So again, guys, try to check those out. And then finally, one last thing before we get going. Don't forget, guys, that we have this free Star U app, remember? So let me see if I can pull this up here. Okay, we have our free Star U app. If you guys will see this in the background. If you guys haven't checked this out yet, I highly encourage you to do so. If you click SAT and then SAT Math on the next page, it's free to download. You guys can have you'll have all of the concepts that we'll discuss today, particularly on the no calculator section, because there's so many more types of questions, or you have to know a lot more math content on this section. So check out the SAT math section of our Star U app. It's free to download. We also have a number of different worksheets. You can continue to work on more practice problems, and all of these practice problems will be generated. If you guys have seen our advanced score reports, also listed in the description below. If you guys have checked those out, then this is a great resource that you can plug in your answers for test number 7, test number 8, whatever it is you're taking. You can plug in your answers and figure out exactly the types of questions you're getting right and which ones you're getting wrong. And then you can focus primarily on those as you come into the app and look at those types of questions. Okay, so again, if you guys are on right now, if you guys have any questions prior to us getting started here, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll get started with the SAT Math No Calc video. Let me pull up the timer here. Okay, again, so guys, this is test number 7. For those that have watched any of our previous math videos, particularly on the, oops, I think, you know what, guys? Give me one sec here. I think I might have to get this into a different format. There we go. Give me one sec here, guys. I should be more prepared. You'd think I'd be more prepared for a video. Again, this is test number 7. The nice thing, guys, about the math no calc section is no matter what, if you look at any math no calc section, almost all of them involve the exact same concept. So like going into test number 7 here, it's really important that you just recognize that if you know some basic concepts, so let me pull those up here. If you guys know some basic concepts related to test number 7, if you know things like linear equations, I can't express to you how important it is to know just simply y equals mx plus b. You're going to see that so often on these types of this section of the test. Linear equations, so y equals mx plus b. Simultaneous or systems of equations, right, where you have 2 equations listed out, systems of equations, right? If you know this stuff, so this is where you have like x plus y equals 4 and 2x plus 3y equals 9. I don't even know if those would work. But if you know those two concepts and then a little bit of basic algebra, okay, you will just absolutely dominate this section of the test. And remember that all of these questions, when it's related to the math section of the SAT, all of the questions, it's out of a total of 58. So for those that have taken the SAT math section before, if you look at the 58 questions that you'll see on this test, right, 20 of them are related to the no calc section and 38 are related to the calc. And those would add up to a total of 58 questions, which then would equate to some 800 level score, depending on the test and depending on the scale. So the point that I'm making is that if you look at this, approximately each question, right, each question is worth, let's call it 13 to 15 points, okay? And so when you look at these 12, I don't know if that math is even right, but if you look at these 20 questions, if you know these concepts, the ones that I just brought up, linear equations, and all of this can be found in the app, okay? If you know systems of equations, if you know basic algebra, if you know those 3 sections, you're going to really do well on this section, and you're already then to 300 out of the 800 points available on math. And this doesn't require any real test-taking knowledge. One of the things that we're going to talk about today, and we talk about this for every math section, is the one thing that you want to do better than everybody else. If you guys are great test takers, the best thing that you can do is not get stumped on any one question. Every question on the SAT math, on both sections, for every test, both sections, each question is worth the same amount of points, right? It's just a total out of 58 that then equates to an 800 score. So every question is worth the same amount of points, so you get no benefit or no value in answering harder questions if it means you're making simple mistakes on easier questions. So your job is to find the easiest questions. And for me, I try to make kind of an extreme example of this when we do these live streams for ACT math or ACT science or either the SAT math questions. I try to make an extreme example to the sense that, like, if I look at a question and I immediately say, like, that's a word problem and that doesn't really make sense, like, that's going to be more time consuming or there's a higher likelihood that I make a simple mistake, I just immediately skip it. And so hopefully you guys are going to see that today. But it becomes so easy then, because I'll get 10, today I'll get, who knows what the number is, but if this is an easy math no calc test, I'll get like 10 to 15 right probably without ever looking at a hard or time consuming problem. And if it's a harder test, I'll probably get right at about 10. But I'll do it quickly enough that then I know the scale is going to help me at the end, and I know that I can just, at the very least, I know I've gotten 10 questions right? In terms of this, I know that before I ever look at a hard question, I will have scored 130 to 150 points on the math section, and hopefully I don't make any simple mistakes. Okay, guys, so again, if you guys are tuned in, if you guys are watching, don't be afraid to give us a thumbs up in the comments section or in the chat. If you want to ask any questions, of course you can. This video will be available immediately after the live stream is over as a recorded version, so you guys can always come back and ask questions within the comments section. But without further ado, I know I said beforehand that we were going to do this section because it was relatively short and relatively straightforward because the concepts always just are so repeatable on the SAT no calc section. Without further ado here, guys, let's get started. Okay, so this is math test. Just real quick, this is math test number 7. So no calculator test number 7, section 3. So the no calc section is always section 3. 25 minutes on the clock. No calculator, obviously. Don't use your calculator if you're watching this video. Or one last thing, our encouragement is for you guys to take this test on your own if you haven't already. Take this test on your own. Then with your own test in front of you, then start the video and go through it and see, which strategies that I use that might make more sense for you, or which ones you're like, Chase, you're an idiot. That's the dumbest strategy I've ever heard. If that's the case, then don't implement it in your own strategy, okay? So 25 minutes on the clock. Again, our main goal is to find all the easiest questions first. We call these pass one questions, where we pass through the entire test. We answer all the easiest questions first before ever looking at a hard question. Okay, 25 minutes, and our time starts now. And I will try to talk you guys through each one of these questions. Yeah, so for example, guys, I'm sure number 1, you guys know that this is not in order of difficulty. I'm sure number 1 is easy, but I'm not going to answer it because the chance I make a simple mistake on that question are very, very high. So why would I start with that question when I can warm up with much easier questions like number 2? Right, number 2 is so easy. Just make sure that you distribute 3x, right, plus 15 minus 6 is equal to 3x plus 9. Okay, so guys, again, starting with number 2 there, there's so much less momentum lost because I never looked at a time-consuming question. I like systems of equations problems like this, and they've actually made this very easy because they have already said x equals this. So if you know x equals that value, you can just go ahead and substitute in for the x, right? In fact, before we even do that, I'm going to multiply this entire equation by 2, just so we get rid of that 2 out front here. And so we get x plus 4y, right, is equal to 12. Make sure you don't make a simple mistake. And then you just come and substitute in this for x. So we get y now, y minus 3, plus 4y is equal to 12. 5y minus 3 is equal to 12. Add 3 on both sides. 5y is equal to 15. So y should be equal to 3. And what you guys will notice is that there's only one value here for number 3. There's only one value that has y equal to 3. So we don't even have to go back and plug that in for x. The answer must be B because we solved for y, and that's the only answer that has y, right? XY point. That is the only, whoops. That's the only one that I write y first. XY coordinate, that's the only one that has y equal to 3. So we don't have to do anything else. I encourage you guys to look, after you're done with one step of any question, look at the answer choices because you'll find that a lot of the answer choices are, you get it right by default. You never have to go back and plug it in for x. Guys, anytime you see I on the test, if it's early on, the question is very easy. They're trying to throw you off with the idea that I is a complex number, right? Complex number, and that it's a high-level math concept. But we know that generally speaking, number 4 should be pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And in this case, all they want us to do, right, is just combine like terms. So the 5 combines with the, well, actually the 5 doesn't combine with anything, right? We're going to take this into account in a second. But we get, let's see, we get negative 9i squared, right, because we're going to distribute this negative in first, plus 6i, be careful, plus 12i, plus 5, right? And right away, guys, just with that, because we can combine these to make 18i, we know right away that answer choice B and C can be off. And that's what I mean when trying to go through this, make sure that you look after you've done one step. The 18i is the only, oh, wait, and guys, even better than that, that's plus 18i. Right, so the answer has to be D there. Even if you don't know, this is so important. What are we at? 22 minutes. Yeah, even if you guys don't know anything about I squared, like if you forgot that rule, you didn't even need it here. Right? You found the part that was combining like terms for the easiest two. You just did that like any other variable. And this idea of I squared, right, doesn't even come into play. And that's so important to recognize when you're taking this test. That they try to throw you off a lot of the times just because they want, right, they're trying to throw you off and you don't even need to do the hardest part of that question or the high level math part of that question. Okay, same thing here. If this is such an easy question, there's no thought here, and we could make a simple mistake, but it's unlikely if we're careful. So we just plug in, right, this is just basic functions. We plug in negative 1 quantity squared minus 6 times negative 1, write everything out, guys, right, plus 3 all over negative 1 minus 1. Negative 1 squared is just 1. Minus 6 times negative 1, so there's going to be plus 6 plus 3. All divided by negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2, so we should get 10 over negative 2, which is equal to negative 5. And so the answer then would be A. Again, guys, number 6 might be easy, but it's going to be time consuming when compared to a question like number 7. Okay, so number 6 is not one that we want to try to solve right off the bat. Instead, 7 looks to be very straightforward. There's not a lot of thought. And we're going to know whether or not we know how to do it right away. Number 7, right away, guys, if you notice this word equivalent, the first thing that I do when I see the word equivalent, I think there was one earlier actually though. Yeah, there was one right here too. If you see the word equivalent and you don't know what to do, right, because they're looking right here, this is in vertex form, so you need to complete the square and go through that whole process. But rather than doing that, if you see the word equivalent, you can actually just plug in a value for x. So I always plug in x is equal to 3. Okay, and if we plug in x is equal to 3, we're going to solve for this part of the expression, and then we're just going to figure out which of the answer choices equals whatever we get after we solve for this. So if I plug in x equals 3, I get 3 squared, right, plus 6 times 3, plus 4, 9 plus 18 plus 4 is equal to 27, 31. And now I'm going to plug in x equals 3 to each of these answer choices. So in this first one, I get x equals 3, so I get 3 plus 3 quantity squared plus 5. That's 6 plus 6 squared plus 5, which is equal to 41. That doesn't work, right, because we're looking for 31. But right away, guys, I know that this is 36, right? 36 plus 5 is equal to 41. 36 minus 5 then would be equal to 31. And look, this answer choice B must be right. because everything else remains the same about that problem, except instead of adding 5 to 36, we subtract. So the answer would be 5. I'm going to skip number 8. That one looks too confusing. I'm going to skip number 9. That one's way too much, right? That's the type of problem that if you're not careful, you could spend 5-6 minutes on it and still not really know where you're going with that problem. Number 10 is way more straightforward, and these types of questions come up all the time on the test. I don't even know what the question says yet, but with A, B, right, those constants, the coefficient constants at the front, these type of questions come up all the time. So let's see if we can read through this. In the equation above, A, B, C, and D are constants, which just mean it could be 2x cubed plus 4x, right? It's just random letters. If the equation has roots, this is such an important word. -1, -3, and 5, which of the following is a factor? Okay, guys, so anytime you see the word roots, right, roots, or x-intercepts, or solutions, all of those words mean that they are that value is actually x equals that value, right? You get something like x is equal to -1, x is equal to -3, x is equal to 5. When you talk about factors, factors are in these forms that you can see in the answer choices. So you just get something like x plus 1, right? Because this is how you do it, right? X plus 1 equals 0, and that's how you get x equals -1. You subtract 1 on both sides. You guys remember that hopefully from like algebra, right? So you get x is equal, the factors would be x plus 1 times x plus 3 times x minus 5, right? Any of those. And look, now we have x plus 1 as one of our factors, so the answer must be answer choice A. Does that all make sense? Can everybody see that for what number was that? That was number 10, right? Number 10 here. So let's keep going. Let's see, we have about, 17 minutes, 17 and a half minutes now? That was 10. Let's see, number 11. Guys, number 11, I'm going to skip number 11 for right now. This should be relatively easy because it says equivalent. We can do the exact same process we just did with equivalent, but obviously this expression is a little bit harder. So I just don't want to make a simple mistake yet before looking at other questions and getting my mind completely out of it. So let's look at 12 first. We're going to be able to come back to number 11, of course, but we want to find the easiest questions first. When they give us an expression like this in the question, it's usually pretty straightforward. So the function f is defined by f of x equals x plus 3 times x plus 1. The graph of f is parabola. Which of the following intervals contains the root? Okay, guys, so if you're looking for a vertex, right? If you're looking for a vertex like this, you would get x plus 3. So x is equal to -3. I guess it's on this side, right? X equals -3 and x equals -1. And so here we get -1, right? -2, -3. And that means that those are the roots, right? That's where the x-intercepts are going to pass of the parabola. And we're looking for the x-coordinate of the graph. Well, remember that the x-coordinate of the parabola is always going to show up exactly in the middle of the two roots. And they make this very easy for us. Exactly in the middle of those two roots is -2. So x must be b, right? It has to show up somewhere in between -3 and -2. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. -3 and -2. And that doesn't even require us then to solve using vertex form. I can't stress enough, guys, on these types of questions. Okay, on these types of questions, I can't stress enough how important it is to be able to graph something. Graph by hand. Actually plug in numbers and figure it out. Okay, so let's see. If -3, yeah, so we'll keep coming back, and we'll come back to some of these questions, guys. I'm trying to, let's see, which of the following expressions is equivalent to... Okay, guys, so here's an equivalent one that looks a little bit easier, right? I'm not dealing with negative exponents and fractional exponents. Let's see if we can do this one. So we get x is equal to, let's see, x is equal to 4. Okay, so we come in here and we're going to plug in x is equal to 4. And guys, again, if you know how to factor, you can, of course, factor this out. You can say x minus, well, can we factor this out? No, we can't, right? There's a remainder here for all of these. So let's just plug it in. We get 16 minus 8 minus 5 all over 4 minus 3. So we get 16 minus 8 is 8, minus 5 is 3, so we get 3 over 1. And now we're going to plug that into each of our answer choices. So here we get -1 minus, that can't be right? Can't be A. It's almost guaranteed, guys, that if our answer here is x equals 3, then we can eliminate answer choices B and A because that's going to be way too small of a value. So here we get 4 plus 1 minus 8 over 1, right? Which doesn't make sense. Here 5, yes, it's got to be answer choice D. right? And I'm just plugging in those values, trying to do somewhat quick mental math. Does that make sense? So we get 4 plus 1 minus, does that all make sense? So we're looking for the equivalent. Okay, let's see. The expression 1/3 x squared minus 2 can be rewritten as 1/3 x minus k x plus k, where k is a positive constant. What is the value of k? The expression 1/3 can be rewritten. Okay, guys, yeah, so these are really straightforward questions too. Look, this is just basic algebra. 1/3 x squared minus 2. They introduced this value of k to make it way more difficult on you guys than it needs to be. Instead, we can just say 1/3, right? And then this is just difference of two squares. We get x, right? We get x squared minus k squared. And now we can distribute, right? Does that all make sense? So now we can distribute. If we know this equals -2, then we can say 1/3 x squared minus 1/3 k squared. And we know that that's equal to -2. -1/3 k squared is equal to -2. So we're going to say -1/3 k squared is equal to -2. Now what do? We multiply by -3 on both sides, right? Times -3 times -3. We get k squared is equal to 6. So k is equal to the square root of 6. The answer then would have to be D. Oops, my Apple Pencil might be. We have what, 13 minutes left? Okay, let's keep going here. So some of the guys also remember some of these other questions as you guys keep going. Some of these other questions might, let's see, if 2x plus 8 equals 16, what is the value of x plus 4? If 2x plus 8 equals 16, what is the value of x plus 4? Well, guys, that's a super straightforward problem. And remember, when we get to those student-produced response questions, it's very, very likely that they're going to start over in terms of difficulty. So the basic algebra that we're seeing here, it's not surprising that we get back to some of these easier questions. So we're at, what, 1230? So 2x plus 8 equals 16. What is the value of x plus 4? Well, then we can just divide, right? We can just divide by 2 everywhere. And that would give us x plus 4. Divide this by 16 by 2 is equal to 8. So the answer has to be 8 here. It's relatively straightforward, right? Pretty easy. Number 17. 70 degrees, 60 degrees, let's see, in the figure above, M and N intersect at point P, NP equals QP, so NP is equal to QP. MP is equal to PR. What is the measure in degrees of QMR? QMR. Okay, let's see. So that would be, if this is 60, this would have to be 120. Okay, guys, this is relatively straightforward, right? If these are both equal, then the angles of an isosceles triangle have to be equal as well. So that would be 30 and 30 to give us the whole bottom triangle equal to 180. So let's see. Then we get so the answer has to be 30 degrees. Okay, that's relatively straightforward, right? Angle stuff. Number of radians is 700 degrees. So guys, radians is one of those high-level concepts that the SAT expects you to know. But if you know it, it's what we call a hard concept easy question. So hard concept easy question here. We get a 720 degree angle can be written as a pi, where a is a constant. What is the value? Well, if you know the conversion from a degree to radians, right? We get 720 over 1 times pi. What is it? Pi over 180, I think. Pi over 180. And now we're just dividing. So we get 720, right? Divided by 180 is 4. Pi, right? And we said this was a pi, so a must equal 4. Right? That's it. Pretty straightforward, right? And again, that's one of those hard concept-y questions. Let's see these last two. The graph. So the graph of line, this is a part where linear equations comes into play so much. So if you guys see, the graph of the line passes through the point 1, 4 and crosses the x-axis at the point 2, 0. The line crosses the y-axis at the point 0, b. What is the value of b? Guys, so this is just looking for the y-intercept, right? That's 0. When x is 0, y is b. So it passes through the point 1, 4 and crosses the x-axis at the point 2, 0. So we could just go like this, graph it out again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We get a point at 2, 0. And we get a point at 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means here, guys, we're going up 4 and over 1, but we're going negative. So we get y equals, the slope is y equals, right? Something like that. Y equals negative 4x plus b. And now we can just plug in 2, 0 for x, right? So we just get 0 is equal to negative 4 times 2 plus b. So 0 equals -8 plus b equals 8. Okay? Last one, so 20, guys. So one of the things that you should know is even though we skipped questions, we were at 9.5, even though we skipped questions early on, because we can't guess on any of these student-produced response questions, we can't guess on those, right? If you guess, like, I mean, I guess you could guess 1 in a million shot that you get it right. We want, now that we're already on to that past 2 idea, so we've gotten all the easy questions right, and then worst comes to worst, when we get back to those multiple choice questions, worst comes to worst, we have to guess on some of those, but ultimately it's not the end of the world if we have to do that, because we can guess. If we leave 20 blank, that's just going to be, right, we just didn't answer it, so it's not answered. Then there's nothing we can do about it. So at least give 20 a try, and even if you spend a little bit more time on that, 20 here, I think it just looks like combining like terms again. Really be aware of what these A-B constants look like. If we look at that, then we should be pretty straightforward, okay? So 75, 32, 75, 32, plus 100y squared. Let's write this out. Guys, and you'll notice that I try to write everything out as much as I can. Let's then distribute this first, just so that's a very common thing, right? 100y squared again, plus 10 times 110 is what? 1100, so minus 1100. Okay, then we're going to combine like terms, so we get ay squared. So they're trying to throw you off by all of these variables, right? So we're going to add these two. We get 200y squared. And then we're going to combine these two as well. So 75, 32 minus 1100 is equal to 64, 32. So plus 64, 32. And then they're looking for a plus b. So we get 200 plus 64, 32 is equal to 6632. That's it, right? So now we've got those questions right, and we're what at? 7.5 minutes left. So we get 7.5 minutes, and now we're going to go all the way back to the beginning and try to figure out some of these questions. And again, at the end, guys, if we at least we've answered all the questions that we know how to answer at this point. If worst comes to worst, if it's like you miss some at the end, that's what it is. But at least we've answered all of the easiest questions, or the ones that look to be the easiest, no time-consuming questions before we come back to these. And at worst comes to worst, we only have multiple choice questions left. And we might have to guess on a couple of those, but it is what it is, right? At least we can guess. At least we still have a shot at getting those questions right. So here we have x plus y equals 75. The equation above relates the number of minutes x Maria spends each day and the number of minutes y she spends biking each day. The equation, what is 75? Number of minutes spent running each day? No, that's x. Number of spent biking each day? No, that's y. So number of minutes spent running and biking? Yep, C, right? It's just literally she's adding the number of minutes. That's what it says. X plus y is the number of minutes running plus the number of minutes biking. And you guys will see, even though we skipped question number 1, I didn't think that question was going to be the hardest question on the test, of course. But by skipping it, we at least get ourselves into a rhythm before we have to look through it, right? So let's keep going here. Number 6, this should be relatively straightforward, hopefully. 6 still is kind of that level 2 area. The first 5 are usually really easy, and then the 6 kind of starts a little bit harder questions. A company that makes wildlife videos purchases camera equipment, $32,400. The equipment depreciates in value at a constant rate for 12 years, after which it is considered to have no monetary value. How much is the camera equipment worth 4 years after it is purchased? So after 4 years, how much camera? Wait, it is considered to have no monetary value. Okay, so after 32,400, right? 32,400, and it's going to depreciate by 12, right? So we have to do 324 divided by 12, which is 288 is 27. Yeah, so we get 27. So it's depreciating by $2,700 each year times 4 is equal to 108. So we lose 108,000, or no, 10,800. Sorry, we lose that much in value. So what are we left with? 21,600. Yeah, 21,600. Answer choice C. What do we have? 5 minutes left. Ken is working this summer as a part of a crew on a farm. He earned $8 per hour for the first 10 hours he worked this week. Because of his performance, his crew leader raised his salary to $10 per hour for the rest of the week. Kevin says 90% of earnings from each week. What is the best number of hours he must work the rest of the week to save at least 70? So he earned $8 for the first 10 hours he worked this week, so he earned $80. Because of his performance, they raised his salary to $10 per hour for the rest of the week. He saves 90% of his earnings, and we want him to earn $270. So if he saves 90% of his earnings, what's 90% of 270? That would be 24. No, that would be 24.3. So he's trying to earn 24.3, and we've already 243. So we've already earned $80, right? And so he's gonna have to work another $10 times 22 is 220. That's not gonna work. He's gonna save what of that? He's gonna save 72 of that. So he's gonna have to work another 16. Does that work out? 16 would be 242. I gotta move on from this one, guys. 243. I think it's D. Let me just come back. What do we at? 350. I think that one's D, but I might have to guess. But I don't want to spend too much time on it, right? Marissa needs to hire at least 10 staff members for an upcoming project. The staff members will be made up of junior directors who will be paid $640 per week. Seniors who will be paid $880 per week. Our budget for the week is no more than $9,700. Is no more than $9,700. So that would be, it has to be less than or equal to $9,700. So right away then, guys, we can eliminate C. We can eliminate A. She must hire at least 3 junior directors and at least 1 senior director. So that would be what? X was it 315 left? X was number of junior, why is the number of senior directors? So she must hire at least 3 junior directors, which is X. So X has to be 3 or greater. So I think it's got to be this one, B. Okay, now we're running low on time, so we have to be really efficient with some of these guys. Yeah, guys, so in this one, let's see if I can... So the following is equivalent to. This one we might have to solve using, so we get, let's see, x to the negative 2 times x to the third is x to the, now 2 6 or 7 thirds, right? Times y over y to the negative 1. So now we add that to the 3 halves. So y squared 7 thirds would be x squared cubed. So it's got to be d. Right, because x to the 7 thirds would be x to the 6th, but you can cube root that. I think it's got to be d there. Let's see. Number 14, what do we got? 2 minutes. A shipping service restricts the dimensions of a box, or shipper certificate of service. Restriction states that every box is shaped like rectangular prisms. The sum of the perimeter of the boxes and the height of the box cannot exceed 130. So the sum, let's see if the box is related to. The base of the box is determined using the width and length of the box. Jeez Louise. Let's see. So we look at a box that looks like this. You know, guys, just real quick, how much time? 140. See if I've answered all the other questions first. Let me answer all the other questions first. What's the answer those? Yes. Answered this one. Okay, I think we're good. Other than that, what's our time here? Okay, let's see if we can get this. 14. So it's got to be the height of the perimeter box 60 times, no, 60 plus 2.5 times the width. So it'd be 3.5 W, because you do W plus 2.5 times the width, right? Is equal to 3.5. So it's 70 divided by 3.5 equals W. What is the inequality? The width. So W equals 20. 0 must be greater than 20. Allowable width of the box. D? No. A? I don't know about that one, but that one's tough. Let me just come back up here real quick. I had a better chance of getting 8 right. Let's see. We're at 72 is how many allowable hours, and it's 243. So if we did 160, 16 times 10 plus 72 is what? 242. And we're looking for 243. 240. I'm gonna say 242 doesn't get it to us. I'm gonna say it's C. Because 242 was one less. We had to come up with 243 here, guys. We had to come up with 243. I think that's right, because we had to, that was the amount of savings that he would have. So that's the amount of savings he would have. Okay, so that would be the amount of savings that he would have. And if you do 160 plus 72, it would be 242. I think it would have to be the next one up, right? If you work 22, technically I think you could work 17 hours at that $10, but I think it just has to be anything greater than 16. Because when I did 16, that's what I was struggling with on number 8. Was when I did 16, it was like 242 was really close. No, that's why I was struggling. It's not 232. It's two. Just a sec, guys. So number 8, that's where I was struggling. It's 232. I was in my mind. I kept thinking it was 242, and so I was struggling with why that was so close. And if I had made a simple mistake, and now I definitely think it's C. Let's go back to the top. But yeah, I was struggling with why I thought that one was close. Let's see here. Okay, so sorry guys. By the way. Let's see. SAT test 7. No calc. Guys, that number 14. 14, let's see. We put D right. 14. Let's go through it all first. Sorry. Now I'm concerned about 8 and 14. All right, guys, let's see it. Number 1. Number 1 is C. Number 2 is C. Number 3 is B. Number 4 is D. Guys, so remember on number 1, the only reason you skip that is because it's just my philosophy. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but number 1 wasn't going to be difficult. It's just not. That question shouldn't be difficult for, especially if you're a really good math student. The issue that we run into with number 1 is that if you haven't done any math problems, and you wouldn't have at this point in the test. Remember, if you take this for real, you would have just been coming off of 44 grammar questions. And so now when you're sitting here doing this, right, you're thinking to yourself, well, geez, what am I doing now, right? And you miss a question like number 1 because it's a word problem so many times, and we want to try to avoid that, right? That's what we have to think in our mind. That's still worth 10 to 15 points on every math no calc section, and we can't lose that just because it's supposed to be easy, right? And because we have that one first overall. So let's keep going here. Number 5 is A. Number 6 is C. Number 7 is B. Number 8 is C. Number 9 is B. Guys, on this one, number 9 is just because I was at the end. 9 was B. I didn't get a chance to explain it as well because I was rushing at the end. But when you see is no more than, the reason that I knew to cross off A and C right away is because this says it's greater than. So it's at least. And then when I was looking for something else, I was looking for that word at least, and these come up often on that no calc section. So I was looking for at least 3 junior directors, and then I was trying to figure out what is junior directors in terms of the variable. And that's how I knew, because this says this is like no more than 3 junior directors, and what we're looking for is at least 3 junior directors. Okay, so number 10 then is B. That's great. Guys, look out for these two. We say this in our classes all the time, but the roots, right? Roots and x equals, that's so important to recognize. Roots and x equals, so important to recognize. Or factors, right? The difference between factors and x-intercepts, roots, all that kind of stuff. Let's keep going here. Yeah, let's look at 11. So 11 is actually not that bad if you know how to solve exponent rules. Here's what I did here is I just moved, and I was trying to do this in my head because I was running out of time, but I just moved this, I just moved this down, right? Because this was x to the 7/3. And if you can do this, you just get x to the 6/3 times x to the 1/3, which means that you're adding those exponents. So you get x on the bottom, you get x to the 7/3, which is equivalent to, if you guys remember, the cubed root of x to the 7th. And then for the top, you move the y up and you do the same thing. So you get y to the 3/2. And that's equivalent to the square root of y to the 3rd. And then remember, that's like saying y times y times y, and the root takes away 2 of those y's. And so that's how you have 1 y out here, right? That's how you have 1 y out here and 1 y that's still square rooted. With the x, because it's to the 7th, right? If you have x to the 6th, you could remove then 2 cubed roots of x by saying x to the 6th. And so we remove those, and we're left with still with 1 cubed root of x inside of there. So again, that's just one that I didn't get a chance to explain very well. Number 12 is B. Great. Real quick, guys, I'm seeing some. I'm seeing some questions here. Let's see. Practice test. So yeah, Nate. So practice tests for Princeton Review. Practice tests for Princeton Review are, in my opinion, way harder than the real thing. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but every time I look at those problems, I'm like, man, it's almost like they've taken all what we would consider level 2. If you guys have gotten an SAT score report back, you'd see like the first 5 are level 1s, right? Who's seen that? Anybody give me a thumbs up if you guys know what I'm talking about? So SAT, you get like the first 5 are level 1, next 5 are level 2. In my opinion, the Princeton Review, it's almost like they've taken all level 2 questions and made them level 1 questions. And so, especially the early questions to me, and maybe this is wrong, the early questions and then the single hardest question on the Princeton Review test seem way harder to me than anything that you'd see on this no-calc section. That's just my opinion, but I think if you're using, I would rather you guys, you can go on like Reddit, and find all of the released SAT exams. There's like 40 of them or something from the last 4 or 5 years. You can guys go find those and use those, unless you've taken all 40 of those before you do Princeton Review. Again, that's just my opinion. I just think the Princeton Review is a little bit harder than what you'd see here, but it is what it is. So 13 was D, great. 14 was A, and 14 was A because, guys, this was a complete guess, to be honest. I knew, first of all, I knew that it had to be one of these two. It had to be one of those two. Because we were going to get because 70 divided by 3.5 is equal to 20, though, right? Why would I have gone with 30 equals? Are we looking for something else? Let me see if we can work through this one, guys. Let's see. It is A. The perimeter of the base is determined using the width and length of the box. The box has a height of 60 inches. Right, so this is now 60. Its length is 2.5 times the width. So length equals 2.5 W. This is what I was trying to do really quickly with this 3.5 W, and W equals W, right? So you get, now we can say 60 plus W plus 2.5 W is equal to 130. And so then 3.5 W is equal to 70 by subtracting 60 on both sides. So then W equals 20, but there's got to be some restrictions here, right? Because the perimeter of the base, the receiving states that provide shape like routine, the sum of the met perimeter of the base is determined using the width. Yeah, guys, I don't know why. Let me see. Does anybody see 33.5 times 10? Get 3.5 times. Oh, if you had 3, that's why. Because if you had 3.5 times 20, that would be the extent of it, right? That would be the 70, and you wouldn't be able to have, that wouldn't work out if we went back and plugged it in. I knew there was something off about that. Does that make sense, guys? Because if we had width equals 20, now then the extent of it would be, I gotta think about that one, guys. That one's tricky. That's what I was thinking in my mind, is that if there would be restrictions on the width, if it was 20, then the length wouldn't be of value. You couldn't have 2.5. I think that's what I was thinking of. You couldn't have 2.5 times the length because, oh, but that still would, oh, but it's double. That's why. Guys, this is double. Width is 20, but you'd have 2 widths, right? You'd have one on one side of the box and one on the other. So that was somewhat of a guess, but 20 seemed to be too big, right? So you'd have a width. So 10 plus 10 would be the 2 widths, and those would be the perimeters. That's it. That's why it is answer choice A. Because 20 just seemed like too big of it seemed like too high of a restriction. So that's how you work through that one. You'd have 2 widths, and those are the perimeters. So 15 then would be D. Great. And I felt good about these last 5, but maybe, let's see, 16 would be 8. 17 would be 30. 18 would be 4. And 19 is 8 as well. And 632. So guys, you can see it. One of the things that I want you guys to recognize, throughout this is to make sure that you realize that I do this every single day, right? This is what I do. You guys, if you've seen our other videos, I do this every single day. And I just want, part of the reason we show these videos in the way that we do is to show that it's still like it's chaos, right? I mean, when you're going through this, when it's a time test and you're trying to work through it now, I was trying to talk out loud through the entire section. And again, you're trying to maximize the number of questions you can get right, because if you do that times 20 is now, let's say it's even times 1, let's say it's times 13 per question, you're already 260 points towards your goal of 800, even if it's on the low end. On the high end, if it's worth 15 points, you're at 3 wait, is that right? No, that's right. Yeah, you're at 300 points towards your goal of 1500 or 800, right? And so again, your goal is to maximize your score. And if you go through this and you really think about, okay, how am I going to maximize my score? How am I going to find all of the questions that I know how to do? The best way to go about this is to just go through it and find the easy questions first. Because what I want you guys to realize is, let's say we would have had we guessed on 14. Something sounded off about 14 being the answer being 20 because it seemed too high. And so when you guys look at that question, at the very worst, you're guessing on it. That's fine. But at the very best, you guessed correctly. Right? So again, at the very worst that we were going to do on this test was when we came back to those past two questions, given that number 1 was pretty easy, number 6 was relatively straightforward, we were probably at worst going to get 18 out of 20. And so one of the things we recommend all the time is set your floor, right? Don't set the ceiling. Everybody's like, how am I going to get the 800 in math? If you do that, there's so much pressure on the test. And the only thing that I had going for me when I was a kid taking these tests was I never had any anxiety or stress towards it. And in every other aspect of my life, that was a horrible trait, right? You want to have a little stress. You want to have a little anxiety to make sure that you're doing things, you're trying to improve. But if you go into this test thinking that 20 out of 20 is the only score that you can get, and then you come across number 14 and you're doing these in order, or you come across number 9 and you're doing these in order, it just puts too much. The weight of the world is now on your shoulders, and that's when you start to get more stressed and start to freak out more, and that's when you see that big downhill slide from one test to another. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Does it mean that you guys have to do all of this and you skip questions that frequently? No, it doesn't. You can use some of the stuff that we use today to try to implement into your own strategy. And then who said it? I was just reading this above Nate's, but reading review. So if you find math to be relatively easy, that's totally fine. And we can do more reading reviews, but the whole point of this, and the same thing goes for reading as well, the whole point of this is try to maximize your score. And the way to maximize your score on an even valued test where every question is worth the same amount of points is to never look at the hard questions until the very end. Now, math is easier because math is technically in order of difficulty, but though some questions will be easier as you go. But when you get to the reading test and the writing and language test, it's your job to be able to identify those difficult questions. On reading, it might be those citing textual evidence questions where you have it, you have like which line references the answer to the last question. Those are difficult questions, and if you miss one, you're likely going to miss the other. And so you don't necessarily want to do those maybe until the end of the passage so that you have a full understanding of the main idea, and maybe that helps you or whatever. But these are the things that you want to be thinking about in terms of your own strategy, and trying to maximize your valued score is all about maximizing the number of questions you get right. It has nothing to do about answering the most difficult questions. So what I want to show you guys is this idea that if you try to answer the questions in order, if you get stuck on one question that's too difficult, you're minimizing the value of your overall score because some question down the line is probably easier. Like for example, if you tried to answer 14 because you were going for an 800, and then all of a sudden you couldn't figure it out, or 15, right? You couldn't figure out 15. Then when you get to these questions, 16 through 20, right? When you get to those questions 16 through 20, all of a sudden it's like your mind is mush. And those questions become a lot harder when in reality, question 16, right? Question 16 is supposed to start over in terms of order of difficulty. Now you're back to level 1 and 2 questions when you get to number 16. So why do 13 through 15 before doing 16 through 18? It doesn't make any sense if you're truly trying to maximize your score. And that's what I want to try to communicate, that my value as a test taker when I was a kid had nothing to do with being the best test taker or the smartest. It had everything to do with just taking a deep breath and remaining calm. And the best way to do that is to only answer the questions first, that you get on a roll and now you feel a little bit better. Now all of a sudden you're thinking about math and you're like, wait a second. And honestly, had I tried to do number 14 before getting on that roll, this idea that 20 seemed to be too high for whatever reason at the time wouldn't have clicked, and I probably would have selected D as I started to do instead of answer choice A. So that's what you got to be thinking about as you go, is how do I maximize the number of questions I answer correctly when every single question is worth between 10 and 15 points on the entire test. Okay guys, so again, hopefully the reason we make these videos is to hopefully get you guys just to at least see more tests, and I appreciate everybody tuning in and watching this in real time and watching the live stream. This will be available for all of you guys as a recording immediately after we're done. And again, I hope that you guys find some value in these tests that we do, and we had some comments on a lot of our ACT videos. We have about twice as many ACT videos as we do SAT videos, and our hope is just that you guys look at this and you use this, because now that the tests are available for free, and that you can hopefully see one of us doing this in real time. This is exactly the same stuff that we teach in our programs that cost money, right? You guys can do this for free if you're willing to sit down with your own test, do a practice test, and then watch these videos and try to strategize, come up with your own strategy and recognize the values of these scales and all that kind of stuff. So in any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll be back on for those ACT test takers. We'll be back on tomorrow. I think it's at the same time or maybe a little bit later for the ACT English review. And we hope to see you guys all there. And as soon as the July ACT is passed, we will turn our attention to the SAT for the August SAT exams. And yeah, guys, without further ado, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week if you're not going to be tuning in for the ACT video tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Have a great one, guys. Thanks for watching.